KU's hoping that their newest tight end can part the Red Sea of the defense and find the opening for a touchdown. Carter Moses from Albany, an all-conference player from the FCS level, rounds out the KU tight end room.
You are Locked On Jayhawks, your daily podcast on the Kansas Jayhawks. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What's going on? Derek Johnson here. This is Locked On Jayhawks. Thanks for making it your first listen every day. Thank you for making Locked On the #1 sports podcast network and checking out all of our different commitment episodes. You can find all of them on all the players that KU has added here with Locked On Jayhawks, as well as KU basketball content here as well. We're going to be breaking out Carter Moses on today's episode of the show. Newest tight end edition from Albany at the FCS level, what he brings to the table, what potentially this means for the position room and the tight end room for KU, his scouting report, all that and more. Let's get started with the news that Carter Moses has committed to KU on Sunday afternoon. Again, originally out of Albany, he was from Wilmington, North Carolina, attended Albany out of high school, where over the course of his career at the FCS level, 46 catches, 494 yards, and 3 touchdowns. He spent 4 seasons with Albany, one of those a redshirt, so he will be a redshirt senior in 2026 after spending those 4 years with the Danes. And I think this rounds out the KU tight end room where, we had a lot of conversation in the Jailen Butler episode and that commitment of trying to figure out what exactly, what was the idea there for KU, right? There's certain athleticism things you see on tape, but there were some questions he had. And now looking back on it, when adding Carter Moses, I can't help but wonder, was Jaylen Butler a upswing or an upside swing for a guy with good athleticism who hasn't put it together yet that you were able to get for a little bit cheaper because of the lack of production, knowing that you had a good chance to bring on Carter Moses and you were going to need somebody who was a little less expensive to round out the roster and fit into your budget. I think it all kind of comes together now. This helps everything fit together like a Lego. So I like Moses's game. To me, this will be one of KU's better tight ends here in the 2026 season. Let's break down why in just a second on Locked On Jayhawks. This episode is brought to you by FanDuel Sportsbook, and of course we have the NFL playoffs going on. We got college basketball season really taking over, college football national championship game coming up, NBA, NHL continue to mosey on here. You can get in on all the action with FanDuel, and right now for every NFL playoff game day, FanDuel users get a profit boost pack waiting for them inside the app. And I'm looking right now, it is crazy to just see Indiana is -7.5. Indiana is in a college football playoff national title, and they're favored by 7.5 points. Unbelievable. But you can bet on that game. Over-unders 48.5. You can get in on the NFL playoff action for the division round, for the conference championship, for the big game coming up a little bit after that. You can find all those over at FanDuel. You make the picks, apply your profit boost to go after even bigger payouts while the playoffs get rolling. Visit FanDuel, an official sportsbook partner of the NFL. Grab your profit boost pack every NFL playoff game day with FanDuel. Thanks again for joining us here on Locked On Jayhawks. Find the Everydayer Club anywhere in our show links, descriptions, where you can get ad-free versions of the show. So Carter Moses is a 6'5", 241-pound tight end. He had 4 catches in 2023, then 16 grabs for 126 and a touchdown in 2024. And then this past season had his best year, 26 snags, 321 yards, 2 touchdowns. He was named to the All-Conference second team in the CAA for Albany. So, that's a big get there. Now, some of the Pro Football Focus numbers don't love him, which is kind of the case for both of KU's tight end additions. He has over 1,200 career snaps at the FCS level. He had a 54.8 grade in 2023, a 57.1 grade in 2024, a 56.6 grade in 2025. Now, as we talked about with some of our past tight ends, sometimes tight ends I feel like get a little underrated on Pro Football Focus, if I don't know, just kind of depending on their role and what they're doing. Like sometimes you can have a key block, but it just feels like those aren't given as much for a tight end necessarily. And so, I think the hope is here with both Butler and Moses, if you're basing it off the Pro Football Focus, maybe you can view it as, okay, did the team underuse them? Was the scheme not right? Was I don't know, like, do you have the ability with Matt Lubick and Andy Kotelnicki to develop them a little bit more and give them a boost there, just based on the way KU schemes the tight end open? Will that be a boost for these guys, right? Now, his career run blocking grades also not great, kind of like Butler. You're talking in the low 50s, high 40s. He also had 8 penalties in his really 3 big years of play. So not necessarily the best blocker. I think a little bit more of a receiving tight end, but it's different because Butler, I think, more of the athlete, although weirdly, Butler has really low like yard after catch numbers, despite having a deep, average depth of target. With Moses, I think the worry here is a little bit of the drops. So he's been targeted 81 career times as Moses. His reception rate is 57%. That is on the lower end. We talked about Butler being in the mid 50s and that was lower. Bruhn was at 50%. That was lower. The other 3 KU tight ends with Cure, Hanukkah, and Grun all had an 80% or higher as opposed to being in the 50s. He also had 7 drops over the last 2 seasons with a Pro Football Focus drop grade that averaged out to the low 50s. So those are not great. Here is something that I found very interesting, though. Again, you think of Butler, the guy they added from Old Dominion, you watch him and you're like, wow, this dude runs like a receiver at times. You would think he's the big yard after catch receiver. Well, he only averaged 1.7 yards after catch per reception in 2025. Moses averaged for his career at Albany 5 yards after catch per reception. That would have been top 15 for tight ends in the Big 12 this past season. If you combined Carson Bruhn and Deshaun Hanukkah's yard after catch per reception, it would be less than the career average for Carter Moses. So I think there's, maybe a little bit more wiggle, or maybe it's just broken tackle. Maybe he's like a strong runner than you might think necessarily. I think the idea is, can you develop him a little bit more? I think those would be kind of the big questions here. I do think KU took a couple of swings at the tight end position. I don't think these are necessarily, guaranteed to work out, but there are certain traits of both of these guys with Butler and Moses that you can see working for KU in different ways. So let's break down that tight end room coming up next. This is Locked on Jayhawks. Thanks again for joining us here on the show. Don't forget you can check out Locked on College Football or Locked on College Basketball for your second listen every day. Check out all of our commitment episodes as well. So I do like this edition with Carter Moses. I know some of the PFF grades poo-poo it a little bit, but I can see the idea here. And like the idea of pairing somebody with Carson Bruhn, it's going to be hard to get like somebody who is could get a bunch of playing time somewhere to necessarily sign up for this. So you take a stab on a guy coming up from the FCS level who was an all-conference pick, and you hope that your scheme, your system, your development can have him take a jump. And the same goes, for Jailen Butler here, right? So you look at the tight end position now for KU, Carson Bruhn, the projected starter as a redshirt sophomore. And then it's a competition. I think Carter Moses, who will be a redshirt senior, Leighton Cure, who will be a redshirt senior, Jailen Butler, who will be a redshirt senior, all of those guys go into competition for tight end too. If I was estimating right now, just projecting out at the moment, I would have Moses as the backup tight end. Then I'd have, the competition between Cure and Butler from there. Maybe you'd give the edge to Cure just from the knowledge of the offense in his, third year at this point with the KU offense here. But you could see anything working out. Now, the big question too becomes, who plays kind of the Jared Casey role for KU, like the role of basically a fullback, H-back, tight end hybrid. We saw Bruhn play a little bit of that last year. But if you're going to do that, then you're going to have to stick with Moses, Cure, and Butler kind of as the regular tight ends. And maybe that's something KU's cool with. Or do they use one of those other guys in that role? I think that'll be very fascinating for KU and who develops into that. And then you might be thinking, oh, man, that's a lot of seniors on the roster who you're going to have to fill again after 2026. So Bruhn at least gives you, more years there. But then the idea is with Kevin Sullivan and Jack Oots, 2 freshmen coming in that I liked both of their, tape and recruiting profiles coming in, that they can have a year to develop. And then maybe one of them can be your, whoever wins the battle of the developing freshman as a redshirt freshman come 2027 can, be a second or third tight end for you, kind of like Carson Bruhn was in 2025. And then maybe you can add one veteran and maybe a depth piece or something in the portal the following season as well. And at the end of the day, I look at the offensive line and I see all these guys who are redshirt juniors and I'm like, Man, that's pretty cool for KU. Or like, I look at overall the team, like in general, there are a ton of redshirt juniors or juniors on the team. Like potentially you could have, like, if Cole Ballard starts at quarterback, you could potentially have nine starters on the offense who are juniors. Potentially on the defense, you could have 6 starters on the defense. Again, it depends who wins some of these competitions, 6 or 7 who are juniors. It's cool to look at that and go, man, if they can figure something out in 2026, those guys could all be seniors in 2027 and they could be like really good in 2027. But then you get to the offseason between 2026 and 2027 and guys transfer away and, whatever. So it's hard to view it as like a multi-year project anymore. It really does feel a little bit more like you just have to go for the 1 year and see what happens from there and kind of adjust and cross the bridge as you get there. But I think that's kind of where we're at with some of these different positions. All right, that'll do it for this episode of Locked On Jayhawks. You can find our show anywhere you get your podcast, including on our YouTube page where you can like and subscribe to the show. Check out all their other commitment videos, and we'll see you next time on LOJ.